One, the director of National Intelligence revokes security clearances for former President Joe Biden, Adam Kinzinger, Hillary Clinton, and more. Now, here's a question. Why do former politicians have access to the nation's secrets? Two, I've been wondering, and I'm wanting to do a deep dive on what's going to happen to college athletics. What's the future of scholarships for women's rowing, women's soccer, men's soccer? How do they balance out all the needs for athletes, but the balancing act of scholarships between football and every other sport? What happens to our kids that run track? With the star of The Tides That Bind, a documentary on Alabama football. How about athletic director Greg Byrnes? Three, the children we left behind, the crisis of fatherhoodlessness with Adam B. Coleman. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel and the Fox News Facebook page. Terrestrial radio, some 36 markets across this great United States of America, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. Or as you're watching us today, just bounce around over there on YouTube or on Facebook. Find a link to the Will Cain Show page or set a reminder. Then you're with us every Monday through Thursday live at 12 o'clock Eastern time. You can also catch the show in video version if you're not here live by subscribing to the Will Cain Show page on YouTube or on Facebook. Drop into the comments section. Become a member of the Willisha. I'm officially 50. Spent my weekend, fellas, in Miami. Not really a Miami guy. Yeah. Not really my jam. We wanted something easy, something sunny, and something warm.
I didn't think you would be.
And so I had a 3-day weekend with my wife and a couple of friends in South Beach. Had a good time. Also watched a lot of basketball. And so here's where we are. We are down to the Final Four. And Young Establishment, James, just give me the rundown really quickly. At least there are only about 4 or 5 people that have a real chance now, a statistical chance to win the Friends of the Will Cain Show bracket. Among them is me. I believe I come in at about a 14% odds of winning. And my path is fairly clear. I need the Florida Gators. Who else is in the running? And it basically comes down to, at this point, who you have picking as your NCAA national championship. Young Establishment, James.
Yeah, so there's 5 guys that could hypothetically win this thing. If Auburn wins, it's going to go to Todd Pirro. If Houston wins, it's going to go to Adam Klotz. If Florida wins, it's going to go to you. And then if Duke wins, it's either going to be myself or comfortably Smug. I would win if Florida were in the championship, and Smug would win if anybody else is in the championship.
You need Duke over Florida. He needs Duke over, what would it be, Auburn.
Auburn, yeah.
So that's what it comes down to. 4 or 5 people, including me, eliminated Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, eliminated Tinfoil Pat, eliminated Two-A-Days Dan, and eliminated Senator Coach Tommy Tuberville, and many more, about 25 people in the Friends of the Will Cain Show League. So it's going to be an exciting week here. Coming up today, I want to figure out why it is that former President Joe Biden has security clearances. But even more importantly, why would Adam Kinzinger, over the weekend, DNI's Tulsi Gabbard revoked security clearances for a whole host, at the instructions of President Donald Trump, a whole host of politicians, including Liz Cheney, Fiona Hill, Alexander Vindman. And although that's of note, the real question is, why do you retain access to the nation's secrets after you've left office? And if there's an argument, by the way, for a former president, what is an argument for a former congressman like Adam Kinzinger? We're going to get into that, plus a few of the thoughts from my weekend in Miami, coming up in just a moment in the Will Cain Show. But let's get to it with story number 1. Greg Byrne is the director of athletics at the University of Alabama. He's also a co-star. We'll give him co-star billing of The Tide That Binds on Alabama football, Inside Alabama Football, which you can get at Fox Nation. We're several episodes into The Tides That Bind. Episodes focused on head coach Kalen DeBoer, who we've spoken with here on the Will Cain Show. And many other aspects. We've talked to some players and some members of Coach DeBoer's staff here in the last couple of weeks. But today we're excited to have the athletic director, Greg Byrne. Greg, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Will. I never consider myself a co-star, so that's an honor to be called that.
Leading man. I know that's what you're thinking. Leading man. Speaking of which, by the way, Greg, I don't know other way to address you than Greg. Every other person that comes in here with some honorific, congressman, senator, and coach is one of the most baffling ones because you retain coach for life, well after retirement. And we've had the open debate. High school, you retain that for the rest of your life? We've decided yes. Position coach, coordinator, we're not sure where the line is drawn and when you aren't called for the rest of your life, coach, but AD doesn't really have something. I mean, I've gotten used to saying Madam Secretary, Mr. Secretary, Director. Maybe that's what it is. Is it Director? How do we get AD with something where I don't just have to call you Greg?
Well, most people in our department actually call me GB for my initials. So
okay.
How about that
right.
instead?
Okay, GB. That's perfect. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have several different things in the time we have together I'd love to talk about with you. But we'll start with the Tides That Bind, this focus on the University of Alabama. It's a really interesting behind-the-scenes look. I had, as I mentioned, conversations with some of your former players, the guy that put this together with Coach DeBoer as well. Imagine it was a pretty big deliberation behind the scenes. How much access are we going to give? I mean, you got a big brand, maybe the biggest in college football, and I know how companies are about protecting that brand. So giving a behind-the-scenes look, that had to have been quite a deliberation.
It was. We spent a lot of time talking about that because obviously you want to limit distractions during the course of the season. And at the same time, too, we were going through one of the most historical transitions in the history of sport with Coach Saban's retirement. And there was a story to be told that our world's changed now because of name, image, and likeness, getting in the weeds a little bit, the House litigation that is potentially going to be settled next month. And so it's a very transitional time in our industry, not to mention, obviously, the Coach Saban's retirement. So with Coach DeBoer's first year here, we thought there was a story to be told, and it gave us an opportunity to put our brand out there and let people see how it was going, a peek behind the curtain. And there were a lot of good times. There were also challenges, too. And I think as people watch the documentary, they can see that we really tried to tell the story and be fair and honest.
GB, you talk about that behind-the-scenes look at what is a historic point in Alabama football, the retirement of Coach Saban. And in the episode, we learned a few things. I don't know if this is true, but it seems like you were with everyone else in that room. Although you probably knew this is out there, it seemed like it came as a bit of a, I don't think the word is surprise, but maybe you didn't know the exact moment at the end of his speech where he was going to head down that path. But you had a plan, a contingency plan. Is that right? For when and if this happened, you sort of had your roadmap?
Yeah, we did. Obviously, from really, I've been here 8 years now, and really from the day I got to the University of Alabama, we started working on it, hoping that we'd never have to execute the plan because we wanted Coach Saban to keep going. But to Coach Saban's credit, he was very transparent with me over the years about it, and he always would say to me, though, we have to keep this between the two of us, so we would never talk beyond our conversations, other than making sure, I keep my president up to date and our trustees just saying, hey, there's a chance it'll happen. And when it comes, here's what the plan is for it to happen. And so the day before he retired, he and I spent an hour together, and he was struggling with the decision. He's talked about that publicly. And so the day it happened, I told him our last time we were together before he ultimately made the retirement speech was, listen, if you retire, then the plan goes into action. If you don't retire, I'm going to disappear out of the room and nobody's going to know that I'm in there. And he ultimately decided it was time. And he was one of the greatest coaches ever in the world at any sport. And it's been an honor to work with him and still work with him today, talk to him regularly. But at the same time, too, we had to be prepared when that time came, and that's what we were. And I think the documentary did a really good job of telling that story.
Tell me how how do you put together a plan? What does a roadmap that is prepared for any given moment, and in your world, that's really on a year-to-year basis, you're kind of cycling through this annually, how you're going to deal with this contingency. You hired Coach DeBoer, who had previous to that year just had a really good year at the University of Washington, took him to the national championship game. So, and you can correct me as I go along, I'm just kind of talking here, but that shows me at least some sensitivity to recent events. Like, Coach, I don't know how many years Coach DeBoer would have been on your radar before his very, very successful year there at Washington. So what does a plan look like that you could have implemented over a 3 to 4 year period, but ultimately ends up with Coach DeBoer?
Well, it's a good way to ask the question, Will. It was fluid, right? And Kalen DeBoer was probably not on the radar screen 5 years earlier. And then when he went to Fresno State to become the head coach and had success right away, I knew the guy he replaced there. And so all of a sudden, when I'm doing my due diligence, having conversations across the country, and saying, "Hey, tell me," checking in with friends in the industry, but saying purposely during those conversations, "Hey, tell me about how this guy's doing." Kalen DeBoer was one of those that got on the radar screen. And so then he went from Fresno to Washington, and Chris Peterson, who was the coach two before him, who played Alabama in the CFP, and he and I have been friends for 30 years. He gave me a lot of insight onto him that he didn't even know he was doing. And so what you try to do during those times, because you had to be very sensitive, because you didn't want Coach Saban to ever think that, man, we were having conversations about him that he could ever take as a leading conversation, right? It was one
Right.
that all we're trying to be is prepared. And so it was Coach DeBoer, and as you can imagine, Will, the pool of candidates for a job like ours is pretty shallow. And so we did all we could to do background and learn A to Z, academics to zone defense, and how they were going to handle being the head coach at Alabama if and when that time came. And there were a lot more people we looked into that weren't very high on the radar screen, but at the same time, too, you wanted to make sure that you were doing your proper due diligence in the process.
Okay, two quick follow-ups on that. You said, I'm sure as part of your roadmap, sort of like, we'll call them uncompromised values, whatever it is you want, regardless of the candidate. There are things that you wanted so that when it cropped up, when this contingency came, you probably had a list of 5 or 6 that you'd already said, hey, these guys have the values we want. And it happened to be that DeBoer clicked a lot of those values that you wanted, right? So one of my two follow-ups is, what were those values? What did you know you needed regardless of the name you ended up with?
Yeah, you needed somebody, obviously, that had a proven track record of having success on the football field, in the college ranks, too. Coach Saban had both been in the college and the professional ranks. The ones who strictly had been professional, and I'm not being critical of anybody or anything, that track record wasn't great. So you wanted somebody that really had a good understanding of college football. Number two, this is a very simple philosophy. I feel personally responsible to every single kid we have in our program, no matter the sport. I've got all of our teams represented behind me right now. What I want my son to play for this coach. Do I feel like they are going to develop them as a person, as a football player, holistically in the best possible manner so they can maximize the God-given talent that they have? Then on top of that, you wanted somebody that was a great fundamental coach in the game, and having the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to maximize the talent that I have to work with at our institution. And the last thing I would say, and there were other things too beyond this, Will, but the last thing, did they have the ego? Did they have the temperament and confidence to take over a very unique situation in replacing Coach Saban?
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they should be timid or anything like that, but did they have the confidence to step into the size 18 shoes that is the University of Alabama, and be able to say, this is the way I'm going to do it, but also at the same time, too, have respect for the tradition of who we are and what we're about?
Oh, that last box had to have been the big filter. Honestly, that had to have been the big filter. And that's probably the hardest to vet as well. Last thing on, so the second follow-up and the last thing on this coaching search, and I think this is just a curiosity. Look, you're one of the most powerful guys in college sports. Your relationships run deep and broad. And I'm just curious kind of like how that works. Like, are you every dinner, every convention, is it just kind of just following up? Who do you like? Like right now today, do you know guys at the non-Power 5 level who are maybe an offensive coordinator, like, I'm hearing good things about that guy? Like, how does that work? Just constant conversation. How big is your radar?
Yeah, that's a good question. You want to be networked. And that goes to, if you're hiring somebody as part of my executive team, somebody in our department, I try to get boots on the ground, Will, with our interns, anybody that is impacting our department. I try to get to know as much information as I can. Obviously, I'm limited with that. But when you're at Alabama, you're going to hire the rock stars, right? And I say to our staff, I say to people who have inspirations to be at a place like our place, what are you doing to separate yourself from the competition? What are you doing on a daily basis in your daily lives and the decisions that you make, and taking care of yourself, developing yourself to the best of your abilities? because when it comes to a place like our place, but in reality, it's sports. Think about how many people love to be involved in the sports. Here you are with, you were just going through your NCAA brackets and pool and everything like that. Everybody, almost everybody in our country gets impacted by sports in some manner, whether you're a very, very casual fan or even a non-existent fan, you still pay attention to it. I'm on the men's basketball selection committee, so I'm part of the group that selects the teams for March Madness.
Congratulations,
really,
14 teams. You must have had a really powerful voice in there.
Well, it was a good group effort, and we knew,
but by the way, I'm just joking. You clearly deserved it. 2 out of 4 teams in the Final Four, 4 out of 8 in the Elite 8. So yeah, SEC deserved their bids. Yeah,
thank you. And it's something that, hey, you get to be a part of something that people spend their own time, resources on to be a part of. How cool is that on a daily basis? What you do, right? People care about what you do and the topics that you talk about. And you feel a responsibility for that, just like I do with what I do with it, working here at the University of Alabama as well.
Well, I do have a responsibility then to ask you this question as you open that door. I might have said a moment ago one of the most powerful guys in college sports, or I might have even said college football, which really limited your influence. One of the most powerful guys in sports. You brought up, and I say that not to just compliment you, but it's not just about football. Is the point? The Tides That Bind is about Alabama football, but as you mentioned, you've got all those programs behind you there on the wall. You just had an awesome season. At basketball, you hired Nate Oates. Nate Oates was a home run hire. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you. The headlines this morning were about whether or not Coach Oates has an interest in Maryland. Is there anything you can tell us about Coach Oates in Alabama?
I can absolutely tell you there's no truth to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Short, sweet, to the point, definitive. No truth to Oates in Maryland. Okay. This is a conversation that I want to have with you, but I think I want to have it with many other people. And I find this endlessly fascinating. And I don't know how to set it up than this. You know, you talked about the court rulings and so forth. And what is going to be the future here? What are we doing with college scholarships? And, you know, with the idea that everybody on roster needs to be on scholarship, so therefore you're going to have to limit walk-ons at some point here. I read this article, Coach. GB, I'm a big Longhorn fan. If you didn't know that coming in, apologies here. But went to law school at UT. Undergrad at Pepperdine. I don't mean to undersell Pepperdine. I love the Waves. They just not as many programs in competition for national championships. Golf, baseball, water polo. Yeah. But there was an article on a Horns website the other day that was talking about they're going to fund another 200 scholarships at a cost of $9 million a year to expand scholarships in a number of other sports, including like women's rowing goes from 20 to 68 or something like that. The article did suggest that maybe Alabama and others are like, how are they going to do this? It's expensive. Will you just walk me through? I think I'm asking you this as a parent, not as a broadcaster. My boys play soccer. Every time I'm around, people are saying, I don't know what the future is. Are scholarships more or less likely for our kids in all these other sports? Like, what is happening with all the non-revenue generating sports and their access to scholarships?
Yeah, we're going through a huge transition like we talked about earlier. And as much as sometimes people think we have an unlimited supply of money, there are limited resources. And so we're going to have to make decisions on what takes place. Now, if the House settlement goes through, scholarship limits are not going to be allowed anymore. Roster limits are. Okay, so
right.
The University of Texas is going to add a lot of scholarships in how they manage their department. We are adding some. We're going to add about 40, but nowhere near what you're hearing from Texas. I do think, and Chris Del Conte is one of my best friends, the AD at Texas. They're a bit of an outlier in how they're managing the scholarship number because they have the financial flexibility to do that. I'm at Alabama, which people think we're flush. We don't have that same flexibility. Okay. So we've had some challenging conversations with some of our coaches and saying, you're going to have this number of scholarships to work with. There will be schools that have more than you do. And now
real quick, Coach, GB, real quick, is it because every scholarship that you offer, you have a net loss to the university? Is that what it is? And so you in terms of tuition, room and board, so you that cost is factored out. So when they say 200 at $9 million a year, that's where that, and by the way, the cost to maintain an athlete with meal programs and everything else that goes along with that. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, so at our place, I mean, I'm real proud of it. The way we support holistically a young man or a young woman in our program, if you are on a full ride scholarship, whether you're on the football team, the women's basketball team, it doesn't matter. If you're on a full ride scholarship, what we spend on you collectively, not counting a dollar in salaries, is about $195,000 a year. Okay. And so sometimes you read about unpaid labor and all those things. I'm really proud of the investment we make in our young men and young women. And I've been in front of a bipartisan Senate roundtable with Senator Cruz saying that. And I think that takes people by surprise, because you don't always think about, hey, what does it cost to invest in a young man or young woman to compete at this level? It costs a lot, and we're proud of it. So the dollars are going to have to come from somewhere. Sometimes coaches' salaries are criticized. We're finishing in the top 10 of the Directors' Cup many years now at Alabama. So that means we are really good across the board in a lot of different sports. And 11 of our 16 head coaches last year, starting the year, were in the bottom half of the league in salary. So we're not just throwing money out. We're trying to be fiscally responsible in our process and what we're doing. And at the same time, too, to have an elite coach like a Nate Oates, right, what he's done for our program, you're going to have to make sure you invest in them. If you don't, then somebody else is going to. So that's a good investment for what we do. A good investment in our football program is going to give opportunities for all of our other sports, because football turns a healthy profit, men's basketball turns a profit, and then we have 19 sports that don't. And
right.
And we lead the country in softball and tennis, but we're in the red in that, and we try to manage our resources within that very conservatively, and at the same time too take the responsibility of that on a daily basis.
All right, I want to be respectful of your time. You're a busy man, but just so I understand, so the net out, if the House settlement goes through, like you said, is you'll have roster limits, but everybody on roster has to be on scholarship. But then it's up to the individual university of whether or not to maintain that sport and whether or not to fully fill out the roster, right? So let me just take an example. So you don't have it in the SEC, but men's soccer, I think, has 25 scholarships. What a program could do is still say, well, we're only going to offer 15, but that's the extent of our roster. So that when you say some schools will have more than you, that's kind of how that shakes out.
Yeah, so you're not required to put somebody on scholarship. You have the opportunity to put somebody on scholarship. And obviously at our level, we're going to try to put as many kids on scholarships as we can financially afford to do so, because we believe in that. We believe in broad-based programming. We believe in the opportunities. We believe the impact that makes on our Olympic movement. And so if you were starting a new business, you would not start college sports, or if you did, you'd only start it with a couple sports and that was it. But we have Title IX responsibilities that we take very seriously, and the opportunities have been great. We have opportunities. One of the coolest things about what I get to do is you have young men and young women from all different backgrounds, and they all come together and they all put on that Alabama jersey, and they're all working to develop to be the best that they can be. You come to our games, whether it's a football game, whether it's a gymnastics meet, whether it's a tennis match, and you got everybody coming together, and I mean this very respectfully. You check your differences at the door, and you come together for the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Sure.
And that's really, really cool to be a part of. And one of the things I've said before too, the locker room is one of the most important places in our country, because again, people from all different backgrounds, they get together and they figure out how to work together. And that's a really cool thing to be a part of as well. And it's something I think we should celebrate. I want us to be able to continue to make sure we do it with as many sports as we can long term, and give our kids a great experience, because those kids on our swimming team, those kids on our baseball team, they work their tail off too, just like all of our other sports, to get to the level to be in Alabama. And I'm proud of what we do for them.
So real quick, are these two likely scenarios? Not for you. You don't have to. This isn't about Alabama. It's more about NCAA sports. So swim team A, we'll call it Alabama, just could be going up against swim team B, we'll call it Texas. And although you can have the same number of scholarships, you just don't, right? So one team has 30 scholarships and the other has 15, and there's no walk-ons, right? And there's no walk-ons to balance it out. So that's a competitive environment that we might need to be ready for going forward, right?
Yeah, yes, but there can be walk-ons. They just the school may not be able to or choose not to fund that scholarship for that young man or young woman. But yes,
I see.
And
yeah.
If you got 30 kids on scholarship with one swim team, you got 15 with the other, the one with 30 is going to have the advantage 99% of the time.
Sure. And so the second thing to ask, do you think we'll see attrition in programs? I remember when Title IX came in, I grew up as a swimmer. I played water polo at Pepperdine. I remember a ton of programs went away. UCLA was an amazing men's swim team, and it went away overnight. Will this have that kind of effect in college sports as well? Do you think we'll see a lot of programs go away?
I said in front of Senator Cruz, and he pressed me on it a little bit. I said, yes, I'm concerned about that. And I'm at Alabama, and right, we're committed to have as many sports as we can. But at some point, you've already seen some schools, St. Francis, I believe, I'm saying the university right, just went from Division I to Division III the other day. I know Loyola Marymount, which again isn't maybe the same brand as some others, but still a Division I school, they just cut a number of sports. It'll be interesting to see if, in fact, the House settlement does go through some of the financial decisions that people are going to have to make. And I'm at Alabama again. We're having to make some tough financial decisions in what we do on a daily basis to support our young people.
Greg, thank you so much for your time today. The Tide That Binds is an awesome show. Everyone should check it out at Fox Nation. And this was really enlightening on a number of levels, including we'll get that out that it's fake news about Coach Oates. Thank you so much, Greg.
That's right. We love the job that Coach Oates is doing. Roll Tide.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll give you a roll tide. There he goes. Greg Byrnes, athletic director at the University of Alabama. Check out the Tides That Bind inside Alabama football. It's on Fox Nation, and there's several episodes in as we speak. Coming up, Adam Coleman writes often at the New York Post. He's got a new book out. It's entitled The Children We Left Behind. He talks about his own personal experience of basically growing up without his father and the effects that has society-wide. And we're going to talk as well about these classified security clearances and many other things in quick takes around the news. Coming up on The Will Cain Show. So I'm a few months out from the New York City Navy SEAL swim, all right? And Diet Starts Tomorrow has been pushed long enough. Diet starts today. Here's what it's going to entail. It's going to entail some lifting, swimming, and high protein. I've talked to you about this before. Like, I want 170 grams of protein a day. Now, how am I going to get that? Well, I'm going to have a lot of meat in stock, okay? This is where it comes in, legitimately for me. Omaha steaks. This is the utilitarian part. I mean, I need the protein. There's also the fun. I mean, spring grilling, Easter, get-togethers. You know, we're going to be outside. We're going to be around the grill. And the best place to go for any of this, and not just steaks, but chicken, pork, whatever you want, is Omaha Steaks, because they deliver the world's best steak experience. It's USDA certified, tender steaks, but like I said, you get burgers and much, much more. And during their spring savings event, which is now, you get 50% off site-wide, so you can stock up at omahasteaks.com. And right now, since you're listening to this and listening to me, how about 30% more off with promo code WILL, W-I-L-L, at checkout. I'm sorry, $30 off, not another 30%. $30. So half off site-wide, then another $30 by typing in WILL. I do it. I legitimately have a freezer full of Omaha steaks, Omaha chicken breasts, Omaha burgers. It's awesome. It conveniently is delivered to your door. It's high quality. And by the way, also hot dogs. And I'm going to try to dial back on this over the next couple months, but apple turnovers that are freaking awesome. It's heartland quality food delivered right to your door. So Omaha Steaks, the best quality and variety of every bite, backed 100% guaranteed. 5 generations of uncompromising quality backed by 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. In business since 1917, America's original butcher. Family-owned company, 100 years experience. Get your chicken, pork, seafood, dessert, and, of course, mouth-watering burgers. Bring home the world's best steak experience with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their spring savings event and for an extra $30 off using the promo code WILL at checkout. That's 50% off omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code WILL at checkout. See site for details. Adam Coleman up next on The Will Cain Show. Did you guys see the interview with Brett Baer? And not just Elon Musk, but all the big minds, the big brains behind Doge. For example, Joe Gebbia, a founder of Airbnb. You got to hear my thoughts on that interview. Incredible interview with Doge. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Please hit subscribe at Apple or Spotify. Leave us a review. Jump into the comments and hang out with us every day right here on the Will Cain Show. Like Adam Coleman. Adam B. Coleman is the author of The Children We Left Behind. He's on Substack. speaking wrong at the right time at adambcoleman.com. And he's been on our show several times. We're glad to have him back. What's up, Adam?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back on.
You bet. This time with a brand new book that comes out tomorrow, The Children We Left Behind. Part memoir, part societal diagnosis and analysis. You really kind of start with your own experience, Adam, of not having your dad a part of your life. I don't know how to ask you this question and not a big open-ended, boom, tell me what that was like or tell me why that inspired you. But it was clearly like a thing that you've carried with you into who you are as an adult and who you are as a parent.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you don't realize how much it impacts you until you become an adult, and you have the hindsight to kind of look back and see all the hurdles you had to go over. But yeah, I struggled a lot with my mental health. At the age of 8, I went into a mental hospital because I expressed suicidal ideation to my mother. Actually, writing this book allowed for me to talk to my family and talk to my mother about these different experiences to make sure that my memory is correct. And she told me something that I didn't remember. She told me that I told her, "If you love me, you'll help me die," and that's what helped to prompt her to go to professionals. And the professionals told her to have me admitted into the hospital, and I was there for 3 months. Um, so these were memories that I blocked out for many years because they were very painful. It took me a long time to even tell people about it, to write about it. I thought about writing about it in my first book, but I couldn't write about it and talk about these experiences without crying. So it took years to kind of resolve just that particular issue, to even have this conversation with you without, crying my eyes out.
And how much of that, looking back, I mean, you're 8 years old, suicidal ideation is a complex thing with many different contributing factors, but the one thing you're talking about here is the absence of your father. So how much of all that was driven by, you ask the questions, you do it right off the bat in your book, like this, it's what seems like it feels like a real sense of rejection, like, why don't you want me? Why don't you want to be around me? Why don't you ask questions about my life? That kind of stuff. Was it just a sense of like, why don't you like me?
Yeah, I think what led for me to get into the hospital was a mixture of my father not being there, and also for my mother feeling the need to make certain changes so she can take care of us, needing the help. We were staying with family members, but in some of those situations, we weren't really wanted. In one particular case, we abruptly left after a family member was screaming at me. I was a small kid, and we proceeded to be homeless for a little bit. So, my mental breakdown happened after we finally, after months, got back into an apartment and we were safe. But moving between 3 states in about 2 years, and being homeless takes a dramatic toll, and you don't know how to process that. And I think that not having my father there to protect us, to be an economic provider, other than what he was paying through child support, um, not having him there as an emotional support as well to look out for us, I think that also contributed.
You talk about in the book that your dad died, so you didn't get direct answers to these questions, but you've lived a life now and you've acquired wisdom. You've become a parent. You talk in the book about, first of all, your book is about the societal importance of family building, family structure, and parenthood, and what that takes. And there's some things I want to ask you about that in a minute. But,
Mhm.
what do you think the answers are, Adam? Like, why do you think? And maybe you can only answer it through the wisdom of analyzing society instead of the personal analysis of your dad. But
Mhm.
what do you think the answers are? Why? Why did he, and what I think you characterize, give you the minimum?
He didn't really want me. It's tough for a child to say that about their own father, but I don't feel that my father wanted me or really loved me. Um, and it took me a long time to accept that, one, and two, to understand and come to that conclusion because I became a father and I see the amount of sacrifices it takes to be a good father. Um, the amount of love it takes, the amount of care it takes, thinking about them, checking up on them, asking them how they're doing. All that takes effort. And I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect parent, but there's a difference between a good parent and a bad parent, and a good parent cares. It's as simple as that. We all make mistakes as parents, and I wasn't expecting a perfect parent, but I just wanted a parent who tried, who cared, and I didn't get that. So I think
Mm.
the answer at the end of the day is that he didn't really want me. He wasn't really interested in being part of my life. And outside of my childhood, the last time I talked to him, I was 21. I was the one who called him. He wasn't really interested in talking to me. I never rejected his phone calls if he attempted to call me, but he never did. And so I didn't even find out he died until a few months after he died. My father disconnected from us. He wasn't that interested.
But you write about this, and okay, you say caring is what's necessary, just caring. I like how you wrote about this, Adam. You said, but parents are pacified with cliches to get a pass as a parent. Oh, it's difficult. Oh, you're doing your best, right? And I think that most of the parents, and here's what we have to do. We have to establish, first of all, there's such thing as success and failure as a parent, right? There's good and there's bad. There's judgment. There's scales. And once we can establish that, then you can start kind of get into like what was bad, what saying you care isn't enough. I like this thing people always say is love is action. Love isn't an affirmation. It's not words. Love is an action.
Right.
But you talk about like how selfishness is so prevalent in humanity and with parents that I think it allows people to get away with those cliches of I'm doing my best.
Yeah, the doing your best, but even more so, the most detrimental is if I'm not happy, my child's not happy, which is not how things work.
Mm.
Your kids automatically want to please you. Children are people pleasers, right? And if you say mommy and daddy would be happy apart, what do you think your kid's going to say? More likely they're going to act like they understand, but they don't. They don't understand adult relationships. They don't understand adult dynamics, which is why often they blame themselves for the separation of their own family. They blame themselves when their parents or one of their parents is no longer there or was never there. Maybe something was wrong with them. I went through that feeling of rejection, like something is wrong with me, hence why my father doesn't love me. So, I think the selfishness of parents finding all these excuses, and what makes it even worse is that there's a chapter in there called Socially Comfortable Terrible Parents, where we have deadbeat dads, we have terrible moms, we have parents who beat their children, who scream at their children in front of other adults, and they get to go to the cookout and they get to hang out and lounge around with other adults, and no one calls them on it. They have family members who have secret kids, and everybody knows, but no one talks about it. Meanwhile, that child doesn't know who their father is or their mother is, right? So I think there is a social comfort in just keeping to yourself, even the people who are the closest to that terrible parent, to not say something about it. And they're thinking about the comfort of the adult who's doing the wrong thing instead of the discomfort of the child who's being forgotten.
You make the argument that the societal necessity of the family is so deep that basically we need to give more thought into who you have children with and who you end up with, but also a less cavalier attitude toward divorce.
Yes, yes, absolutely. We're going to split apart, but I'll put my kid in therapy is not enough. I think every person who gets a divorce thinks that their situation is different. A lot of adults know truly what's going to happen to their kids. They know this is going to be a difficult circumstance, but they still go through it. And I believe the number one reason people get a divorce is because of money, but financial circumstances change all the time, right? So why are you leaving? Why are you separating? Why aren't you there to help support? If finances are an issue, it's going to be even worse for your kids when you split up and there's two households that require income. So I don't think that there are too many situations where divorces cannot be resolved. I've talked to many of people who've been together for 20 plus years, and they all say there was a moment that was really low and we thought we were going to separate, but we worked together and we're even better afterwards. All right, the lowering of pride, the sacrificing of yourself for something that's greater than yourself, your children, and resolving arguments that can be resolved. So I do think that I'm not one of those people that divorce should never be used. Obviously, there are circumstances for it, but not as many circumstances as people think.
I want to ask you about a couple of things because your book is not just about families. It does zero in on fatherhood a lot. So let's talk about fatherhood. How do you, so I think you and I have had this conversation, Adam. Like, if we talk about one of the biggest things plaguing the Black community in America, it is the crisis of fatherlessness. And by fatherlessness, obviously we mean father in the presence of the life of a child, or at least an intact family union. What are our stats right now, Adam? It's really high, right? Number of Black children born, is it without, quote unquote, without a father?
Yeah, it depends on which stat you look at. I've seen stats in the 60s, I've seen stats in the 70s. And then you have people who'll say, well, just because they're not married doesn't mean that the father's not involved, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I wasn't married to my son's mother, but I was involved in his life. I had him every single weekend. I knew what was going on. We co-parented. We didn't fight. Right? We had an ideal situation as far as co-parenting. But I will say, as much as I love and care for my son, I was always behind. Right? When something happens on Tuesday and you get your kid on Saturday and you find out then,
Right.
you are always behind. Right? So even if you are quote unquote involved and you see your kids, right? They needed you on Wednesday, not Saturday. And so I think there is a minimization of the importance of fathers being there, right? You're a good father if you see your kid every other weekend, right? Well, at least you're there. It's just this low expectation for father involvement and reducing us to pay pigs for our own kids. And, as long as we can provide for our kids financially, then we deserve to see our kids. But if we're broke, we don't deserve to see them. It's that kind of situation.
Would you agree with this, Adam? Like, if whatever problem affects whatever community, this is the most pronounced, like, correlating factor, causational factor even, right? This is it.
Mhm.
So if you identify a social ill within the Black community, it's hard to, and we're going to do other communities in a minute. I want to talk about something else, but it's hard not to draw a direct line to, well, you have this really bad stat going on that is perpetuating these other social ills.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the root of it. It's not just fatherlessness, because people try to, like I said, rationalize. Well, he's there just because we're not married. What they don't understand is that the greatest predictor is being married. Now, why is that the case? It's because the involvement is high. It's not that he comes over every once in a while and spends a couple hours with his kids. It's that the involvement is high. And the involvement is high makes it the success rate for their kids. It's not just that, there's a piece of paper that says they're married, right? You have a skin in the game when it comes to raising your kids when you are married. When you're not married, well, you can just exit, right? It's a lot easier. So I do think that people minimize the impact of marriage and why it's important. But yes, happy children aren't the ones who are, hitting other people, running down the street, playing knockout game. Happy children aren't the ones who are stealing from your house and breaking into your car. Like, these aren't happy children. These aren't satisfied kids. And I would venture to say
Right.
many of these kids have been abused in one form or another. A quick story, talking to an NYPD officer who spends a lot of times around perps, when their guard is down and they start talking, many of these young Black men have been sexually abused throughout their childhoods. It's just that no one cares to hear them out.
Who is the perpetrator of those? Is there any commonality on that?
Mom's boyfriend, that the basically it's usually some sort of extended family member or mom's new boyfriend or some sort of man who their mother is allowing into their home. The monster that they essentially allow into their home is the one who has access to them. And I think a lot of women don't realize that predators hunt their prey and their children are actually the target, right? They're utilizing the relationship because the child is vulnerable in a single parent home, right? The mother can't be everywhere.
Wow.
The father's not around enough to protect the kid. And this is a circumstance that happens all of the time.
So I can't remember what comedian this was. Adam, I really can't. I'm just trying to think. It's because these days it's a clip that scrolls across your screen, but I watched it, and it was a comedian talking about dads, and he was being funny, so who knows how serious he was being, but he was kind of downplaying the importance of fathers. Maybe he was talking up motherhood. I can't remember. But he said, look at all the NFL players or the stars or this and that, who've done great things. No dad in the home. There's clearly a hunger mentality to some of these guys, who maybe didn't have their dad. Obviously it can go any number of ways, but one of the ways it can go is to create a human being who's a little more of a striver. I don't even know if that's true, but this is what he was saying. But here's the point I'm getting to with you that made me kind of interested. What do you think? I bet if we societally analyzed it and you said minutes devoted, the optimal healthy setting for a child, the mother is going to have a ton of minutes devoted to time with the kid. And the dad wouldn't be a one-to-one correlation. It really just wouldn't. Because throughout history, dads have gone out, hunt, gather, work out of the home, whatever it may be. That's not to minimize the important role of a dad. I 100% believe it. But it's kind of interesting to think about what is the ideal involvement of the father. It isn't simply the same amount as the mother. So what is the answer?
Well, especially in economic times where, for many households, two incomes is necessary, it becomes a difficult balancing act. I don't think that there's an ideal situation for every single household. Obviously, we have to make enough money to take care of our families. That's what it is. But I do think that there's a value in seeing our children every day, right? There's a value in seeing your son watch you go to work every day to take care of them and coming home and spending as much time as you possibly can with them or acknowledging them or at least having a conversation with them. How was your day? What did you do? To understand who your children are. And I think kids are very forgiving. They understand you can't spend 24 hours with them, but they see that you're trying. They see that you're putting in an effort. And I think that effort, that step, that action behind that effort is really, really important. So yeah, you might have to work 8 to 12 hours in a particular day, but at least come home and acknowledge your children and show them that you care.
Yeah, I like that every day, And you also had a line that you felt like your dad didn't ask you any questions out of genuine curiosity, but out of sort of formality,
Right.
Maybe not even listening. But I think that what you're describing is what we got. Be there every day and be present and invested at some period of time in that other person's life, like you would with any other human being you've shown interest. And as you said in the beginning, that you cared for.
Yeah, exactly. If you love someone, you'll sacrifice for them. I think that's ultimately what this comes down to. This book is a relationship book, right? It's about a relationship between the child and their parents. With examples where at least one or more parent has failed their child. And I have stories in there beyond my own personal story of parents who have failed their children, but they've failed their relationship with their child. And in some circumstances, their children are crying for them over and over and over to give them another chance and constantly being disappointed. And they're being failed repeatedly. And I think we are failing in some ways in our relationships with our children. I know we like to see it as we are authority figures, which we are, right? But at the end of the day, we're developing a relationship with a child. When that baby is born, we are starting brand new with a relationship with our children. And we're just trying to develop it from there. And they deserve our relationship. They deserve the love and care that we are supposed to give them. You don't need a pat on the back for loving your child. It's supposed to be something that comes from the heart. and no one should push you, you know. My mother shouldn't be the one to tell my father to get involved in our lives. My father is the one who's supposed to do it because he wants to. You can't force someone to love, right? Just like Jesus. We have free will, right? We can reject Jesus Christ or we can go towards him. But we have free will to love Jesus or not. That's our choice. You can't force someone to love, and that's the entire point. All of this is relational.
And as you point out, sacrifice is the constant is a constant theme you have here in the book. If before you go, Adam, I'd love to just run through some comments, if you wouldn't mind,
Absolutely.
that we have here from some users, and I just see if I can get them up on my screen here. Don Hebine says Adam seems like a good soul. Another comment says the number one risk of abuse to children is a step parent, a boyfriend, girlfriend in the home.
Yeah.
Suzanne says, I think you can make an argument for quality versus quantity too with parents who are not married. So the type of time you're spending with them. But you did make an argument for every day. And I think there is an argument for quantity as well, to your point. Don't deal with a Tuesday problem on Saturday.
Exactly. I agree.
Mysterium says, this man keeps it real. Here's one for you, Adam. Fire Sign says, why didn't you marry his mother so you could always see him? I think it's a fair question. You know, you said you had a kid and you're not married to the mother, and you talked about the divorce is something that should require sacrifice. How come you didn't marry your I don't know, you have a son, I think, right? Is it a son or a daughter?
A son. He's 19.
Yeah, there you go. Why didn't you marry your son's mother?
That's a fair criticism, and also something that I've criticized myself in different writings and stuff. I grew up repeating what I knew. I didn't understand the importance of marriage. I didn't understand the importance of even family planning. That wasn't like a concept to me. I was chasing girls who liked me, and I engaged in sex, and I was looking for acceptance. At one point, I did want to have a relationship with her, but it didn't work out. And I think that, and this is, I love my son with all my heart, so this is not a regret or anything like that, just being very open and transparent. If I was doing it all over again, I probably wouldn't have been in that circumstance. But I think the main difference is that I'm not a perfect parent, and I'm not claiming to be one, and I'm not chastising other parents. What I'm saying is the difference with my mistake is I'm telling my son not to repeat my mistake. I'm telling him there's a proper order to do this. I'm telling him to get married, then have children, you know, and be there for your children. And I'm not making excuses for what I did.
Yeah, it's a really good answer. And then finally, my Brule story says, I can relate to this guy. I'm very happy to see him succeed and standing strong. And you can read all about it, by the way, in The Children We Left Behind. It is on sale tomorrow, Adam, right? There's an excerpt in the New York Post. And you can keep up with Adam at his Substack, Speaking Wrong at the Right Time. Type in adambcoleman.com. Check out The Children We Left Behind. It's always a fascinating conversation, Adam. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Okay, there he goes. Adam B. Coleman. All right, let's take a quick break for our final segment. We'll come back. We're going to do an episode of Quick Takes. I was out on Friday, Miami over the weekend. I want to hit some of the stories that were big over the last couple of days with the fellas back in New York when we come back on The Will Cain Show. Tell me why Adam Kinzinger has a security clearance anyway. It is The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, on the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook. Spring of the boys in New York. Two-a-days Dan, Young Establishment James, Tinfoil Pat. What's up, fellas?
What's happening?
Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. Weather was nice. Like 70 degrees on Saturday.
You know, mine was okay. I was trying to watch a lot of basketball, but my wife's starting to get sick of it because there's been a lot. So she's starting to get fed up. Yeah, she's starting to be like, do we really have to watch basketball again? So it was a little tough.
Well, I'll tell you two things. I had brunch. You'd be proud of me, Dan. I had brunch over my long weekend. Yep, mimosas, even mimosas. had bottomless mimosas and shit.
I don't even do
Yeah.
that. I go full Bloody Mary, so I don't know what you're doing.
Well, my favorite thing about it is it's unplanned. We just sat down for breakfast. Said, "Yeah, why not? Let's do the
So
mimosas."
brunch is
I
good
like
for.
that.
2 hours
Yeah.
later. I'm a big unplanned guy. I don't like planned fun.
Yeah, disappoints.
The second thing is, this is somewhere out there on your horizon, Dan, and I don't know, Tinfoil, if you do this, but we do a family bracket, and I got to say, it's pretty fun. Now, I have boys, and so my wife pays attention. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't really know much, but she pays attention because you got a family March Madness bracket going.
Yeah.
She had Tennessee winning it all. But
It's a good idea, though. It's fun.
yeah. All right, let's do this. We had a long weekend, so we have a lot to catch up on. And Tinfoil Pat, the most electric man in television, is going to take us through the news. Take it away, Don Tinfoil.
That's great, Will. I'm glad you had a great weekend. And we are starting with the story. We're not going to bury the lead here.
The story.
The story, DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard has revoked the clearances of former President Joe Biden, security clearance, former Vice President Kamala Harris, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, Fiona Hill, and Alexander Vindman. What do you think about that? Why do these people still have clearances, Will?
Well, you know, that was my question over the weekend to you guys.
Yeah.
And I got the answer this weekend I sent this to all my staff. I said, somebody explain to me why these former politicians have security clearances. Why is this something that needs to even be revoked? I think the easy story is, oh my God, President Trump revokes their security clearances. But tell me why they have it anyway. I don't really get it.
Once you're
Looking
read
at my
in,
answer, which was sent to me.
once you're read in, you always are read in. Is that kind of the thing? I mean, unless you take a job with another country, I don't know.
Well, traditionally, presidents also like advise each other, like they
Right? Yeah.
like
Obama. And,
yeah, Obama would call up Clinton. Hey, what do you think about this? Bush 41 and Clinton
Well,
ended
that's
up
the
becoming
answer
good
that-
friends.
I was offered up with some research here backing up. The practice of providing former presidents with access to classified information stems from a tradition of keeping them informed on ongoing national security matters, especially when they are advisors, authors, or political figures. The current sitting president, not the government, determines whether or not to grant former presidents access to classified information and the level of access. Okay, fine. It's a tradition, one that I don't see the necessity or quality of continuing. I don't think Donald Trump's going to be consulting with Joe Biden. My suspicion is if you had a President AOC in 2028, she's not going to be consulting with Joe Biden. So no big loss there. But that doesn't answer for me why Hillary Clinton and Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger have classified clearances, access. I still don't have that answer, and I don't think you should. In what world does Adam Kinzinger need to maintain some type of security clearance? None. So not only not a scandal, this just should be the way it goes.
Is it just an oversight that people just don't revoke it once you're gone? I mean, once you leave a company, they take away your access to your work email and all that kind of thing. I mean, is it that type of?
Well, if it's an oversight, what are we doing talking about a signal chat inclusion of Jeffrey Goldberg?
That's what I'm saying.
That's a pretty big oversight.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're just out there in the world and you still have access to all this classified information? Great. Awesome.
It's like when you leave a company, but you still have access to their national rental car company discounts, you know?
That's great.
It hasn't been shut down, so you're still getting a great rate on a rent car in Miami.
Yeah.
Did that happen?
Yeah.
I'm currently employed, James.
Still
All
using
right,
his
what do you got,
candidates.
Tinfoil?
I was just going to say, we noticed that he didn't pull the security clearance on any of the lower level employees of the federal government who may have been running the place in Biden's absence. So maybe he does want to keep those channels open.
Maybe.
Calls up Jake
What
Sullivan.
else you got?
Second story. Doge. Big interviews on Thursday and Friday with our own Brett Baer. And you can check him out on the Fox News channel. And in it, what do you think about Doge and what they're doing, those interviews? Did you? I saw.
In fact,
saw
I
you
think we have a
caught him.
clip.
We have a clip.
We have a clip.
Play
In
it.
fact, two-a-days.
We do.
There are in the federal government around 4.6 million credit cards for around 2.3 to 2.4 million employees. This doesn't make sense.
Right.
And so one of the things all of the teams have worked on is we've worked with the agencies and said, do you need all of these credit cards? Are they being used? Can you tell us physically where they are?
I hope they're getting frequent flyers.
Actually, on a different note, the rewards program the federal government has is actually not very good. That's a whole other...
It's a negotiation.
Sure, yeah, exactly. But so far, the teams have worked together, and they've reduced it from 4.6 million to 4.3 million.
So that is the COO of Doge, Steve Davis. Also, there was Joe Gebbia, who's an Airbnb founder. So I think I just ate. I ate terribly. I mean, I ate good, but I ate whatever I wanted. I had those bottomless mimosas. I had insomnia a fair amount.
Love that.
On my getaways. I didn't come back rested. And, I mean, I'm talking like first night up till 2 a.m. One night I was up till 3. I'm talking about not having a good time out there. I'm talking about, laying in bed. Why can't I fall asleep? And one of those nights I watched the entire Doge interview with Brett Baer. Here's my thing. It's 7 people, counting Elon. My takeaway is, for all the people out there burning Teslas and painting penises on the door, the thing about is you need to, in swastikas, is I think you're living in an alternate reality where you believe these guys are all a bunch of, computer hacker nerd kids who've been hired by Elon to execute his wishes. These are impressive people, accomplished people that have worked at very high levels of private sector who are coming in going, this is crazy the way all this is run. The main word I kept coming back to is competent. Like very, very competent people, all already accomplished and wealthy. They're not there to raid the government for money. I'm just telling you, watch what looks, I think it's about a 30 or 40-minute interview. Watch it and tell me you can't come away from some sort of Jeffersonian vision of the citizen legislator, and I know they're not elected, but service. It's the definition of service. These people are dedicating time of their lives to go do this, and they're highly competent individuals. I don't know if you watch that, how you continue to go out and paint swastikas on Cybertrucks. Go ahead, 2 days.
Well, the worry is I think that these guys are just the figureheads and not doing the actual work on it, and then the other kind of lower level people are. That's the worry I've heard from it.
But you're disavowed of that in watching this. Like,
Right.
these people know what they're talking about in this stuff.
They're read in. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, the commentariat class who's practiced in doing nothing, I saw some like, oh, these guys are idiots. Like, if you believe what they're saying, you're an idiot. Like, I don't know, whatever claim, maybe the credit card claim or they talked about how many people up to the age of 120 are still on the Social Security rolls or whatever it may be. Elon Musk just did a thing in Wisconsin with another guy, and he was like showing how the Social Security rolls have expanded from a couple 100,000 4 years ago to 2.3 million. I had a friend go, this is all stupid. It's all for naught. Everything's in entitlements or the Defense Department. And it's true, like whatever, 75% of our budget's in Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and Pentagon. But this is intolerable. This stuff is intolerable. And if you don't want somebody to come in with competency and fix this, well, I guess you just want to paint swastikas on Cybertrucks.
Well, it's crazy, too, that they said about the Social Security numbers, it was raised in 2008 and no one did anything about it. So they knew about these things were happening, and they just didn't do anything. I just don't understand that. So now, things need to get done, and they need to take care of it.
Go ahead, tinfoil.
All right. I buried the real lead, and that is big conflict in the world of baseball. The New York Yankees are using weird-looking bats. Torpedo bats. I don't know. It's a lot of people were saying the Yankees in general, cheating again. Are they cheating again, Will?
Whoa. Defamation.
I'm not outraged at all by the torpedo bat. It's within the rules.
Yep.
What's the problem? If it's within the rules, what's the problem? Are you supposed to just stick with the traditional bat because that's what people do? Or, every other sport, baseball does too. Like, here are the rules. Do everything you can within the rules. So they shifted the mass, right? The weight of the bat to a different sweet spot.
Yep.
That they found greater success with. What?
Dan's pulling it up right now. It shows
a picture of the torpedo bat?
Yep.
So what's going to happen? Are we going to outlaw the torpedo bat, or is every team going to be using it in a matter of weeks?
Well, the Braves just ordered a big shipment of it. So, Patrick's
Listen,
Braves.
Defamation, okay?
they ordered it.
Why do you care,
Our-
Patrick?
Because I'm a Braves fan. What? I don't know. We need. I don't care. We need. Honestly, we need the help. So let's do it. I'm all for.
I want the Rangers getting the.
Yeah.
Get the
I love Bill
torpedo
Belichick.
bats to Texas.
Yeah. I love what Bill Belichick was doing in New England. Pushing the boundaries. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Change your tune quick.
That's what it looks like there.
It's so
a
funny.
little odd shapen.
Funky.
So for anybody listening on podcast or radio, it looks like the center of gravity, the center of mass of the bat was shifted about a third of the way down the bat, and it tapers towards the end of the bat. And so, is that a torpedo? Is that what a
Yeah.
torpedo looks like? I'm not sure.
But imagine hitting it off the end of the bat there.
Doink.
The pain in your hands would be ridiculous.
At the more narrow end of the bat you're talking
Yeah,
about?
Yeah. Imagine that.
That thing's does it break easier?
It must.
So say you get a pitch inside, right? Or you get the ball
jammed.
off the inside of that curvature.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to pull harder than it would have before, right? Because
Yes.
of the angle of the bat.
Yep.
And if you get it on the outside, it's going to push harder than before. So I would assume one of the things it does, it'd be interesting statistically to see over time. Yeah, you're spraying balls more than driving up the middle. So it should cut down on drives up the middle.
Yeah.
But they're also saying it gives you better launch, right, for a home run.
Yeah, but if you're a power hitter, you don't want this. You always think, bigger barrel, the farther it goes. It's just physics.
Well, the two guys that are using it are Jazz and Anthony Volpe, who are more like contact speedster types.
Volpe's hit a couple home runs, though, so is
Yeah.
Jazz. So I don't know.
Yankee Stadium home runs, though.
That's true.
Albeit.
That's true.
But Aaron Judge is not using it.
No.
Judge is not using
He's
it,
like,
so
I
it
don't
doesn't
need
need
that.
it.
He already has like 5 home runs this season in the first
Yeah.
3 games.
2 seasons with almost 60 home runs. He'll be.
It's insane.
I don't know. I'm all in on it. I mean, what's the problem here? I saw like Dave Portnoy's outraged. Like, what is there to be outraged about? That your team didn't do it first, right? And by the
Yes.
way, you lost 3 out of 4 to the Texas Rangers on opening weekend.
Yeah.
Red Sox.
I think that's what he's mad about.
Rafael Devers setting a league record for 10 strikeouts. Just saying.
Yeah, that's what you're mad about. But
Yeah.
like, get with it. Order them to Atlanta. Order them to Texas. It'll be normalized before you know it.
Should get one in
Or if you feel like everybody has to have the same bat, I guess we'll
It's not
go
like
back to
they're-
the old one.
It's not like they're banging on trash cans and videotaping things,
All right. So we'll be watching for the progress of the torpedo bat across Major League Baseball. All right, that's going to do it for Quick Takes. It is also going to do it for us today here on The Will Cain Show. We'll be back all week, same time, same place, same channels. I'll see you next time.